The Grand Army of the Gondolarian Empire needs you. We are looking for fit, strong men and women to serve as frontline foot soldiers and cannon fodder. Be slaughtered for the glory of the Empire. While your sacrifice will never be acknowledged, you'll die horribly knowing that the idle whims of your illustrious masters have been served. Sign up before Friday for a 2% discount on your mandatory uniform.
All the tabletop role-playing news. We aim to amuse and we aim to enthuse. And Morris's unofficial tabletop RPG
Hello, and welcome to Morris's unofficial tabletop RPG talk. I am Russ, aka Morrus, or Morrus, aka Russ, and with me this week is
Peter Coffey from the Southampton Guild of Roleplayers. Russ, as ever, it's absolutely fantastic to be here, and I hear we have an absolutely amazing episode lined up.
We do. We have a guest who has been here before. In fact, not that long ago.
They came back.
They came back? Why?
What were they thinking? Hello.
Yeah, welcome back, James Introcaso.
Yeah, hey, thanks for having me back. You know, I appreciate it. I'm getting so bored here in the quarantine, so I thought, maybe you'd be nice enough to let me come back and destroy your audio and have your listener count drop as people hear my voice return to the podcast.
Our actual aim is to get as low a listener count as possible. We will only be happy when it's at zero.
right. It's like golf.
We're doing
right?
a great job.
Yeah. Anyway, James, I need to congratulate you. Your Kickstarter.
Oh, thank you. I need to congratulate you too.
Well, your Kickstarter ended on what, 69 grand?
Yes.
What a wonderful ending.
Thank you. Yeah. I am. I've been very happy with the way that Fantastic Lairs did. So, and it's all because we got that Morris bump. That's what it was. It was
completely due to me, and I'm waiting for my check.
But also, I think congratulations are in order for you as well, because as we speak, your Kickstarter is doing extremely well.
Yeah, thank you. We're super happy with that. We're 10 days in, and we're at £75,000, or just about to hit £75,000.
Yes,
and we are super happy about how that's going.
That's pretty good. Wow, 75k.
Yeah,
exactly.
Very, very nice.
Exactly.
Let's do some RPG news, shall we?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yes, we should do some news. That'd be marvellous.
Okay, so I think we're going to be starting with Wizards of the Coast and Orion Black, then.
We're jumping right in. Jumping right in.
Right.
Let's get the heavy stuff out of the way, and then we can do the fun stuff later.
Mm-hmm.
So, Orion Black, Wizards of the Coast employee, and they announced about a week ago that they were leaving the company. Because they didn't believe in the corporate culture. I'm trying to think of how best to summarize it. As far as hiring policies with people of ethnic minorities went.
Yeah, they thought there was a lot of
company.
tokenism going on, I think they said.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So they kind of posted this fairly scathing open letter. Which largely condemned the company for its. I think it actually said the word tokenism. Actually, didn't it? It said, "I believe I was a token hire," Wizard of the Coast, Greg Tito. Is it Tito or Tito? Tito.
Yeah.
Greg Tito.
Thanks, James.
He tweeted fairly gracious, I'm really sorry, Orion, for if we let you down, and that he personally was going to work harder to improve the culture within Wizards of the Coast and try and make it a more inclusive environment for basically people who weren't white people, I guess, is the
straight white men.
It's the short version of it.
No, that.
Yeah, I think it's a fairly good point, right? So Orion first brought this up when Wizards of the Coast put out their diversity statement, said they said, hey, follow the actions, not the words of Wizards of the Coast. I can't say more. And then now I don't know. So Orion was a contractor. So I don't know if they left or if their contract was up or if Wizards of the Coast said, we're going to end your contract early, whatever it was, right? They're no longer with Wizards and felt like they could speak out a little bit more. And it is, I do think there's like a good point about like, if you're going to try to change the culture of a game, you should probably bring in the voices of the people who have been harmed by the culture of the game, right? And Wizards of the Coast has a lot of, I think their design team is all white except for Orion, who's no longer on the team at this point. Right. And then it's a lot of men, right? We know Kate Welch is bopping around in there, but it's a lot of dudes too. So, and I do know they have some good LGBTQIA representation there, right? Jeremy Crawford is married to a man, and there are some other openly gay members of the design team and things like that. But this is, I think it's a really good point that Orion is raising. And one of the things that made me really sad is Orion has made some good games on their own before working for Wizards of the Coast. So they have up on Itch.io, they have 2 games. One's called Mutants in the Night, and it's a Forged in the Dark game. Nice. And then the other one is called Plot Armor, and that's like a solo RPG journaling game. And both of those are really great and really brilliant. And then, Orion said this sort of has soured their experience, and they don't think they want to work in tabletop anymore. And that made me sad because I think what their work is brilliant, and I want to see more of that.
Yeah, I mean, I hope that feeling doesn't linger too long and that they do decide to work in tabletop gaming again.
Yes. Yeah, I know a lot of people who would jump at the chance to hire Orion, so I think hopefully it will be their decision about what they want to do and not they don't have a choice because they spoke out against Wizards of the Coast or something like that.
It is a pretty brave thing to have to do to actually talk about that, because as a freelancer, you never want to be heard saying anything bad about someone you worked for. So it's clearly something that's come from a very personal place to feel that they had to speak out in such a fashion.
So I've got those 2 tweets from Greg Tito here. So the first one said, this should not have happened the way it did, and I'll continue to fight so it does not happen again. I'm sorry if I let you down, Orion. You deserve better. And the second tweet was in response to someone saying that this goes beyond making a PR statement or making a donation and making some actual changes at the corporate level to make diversity, part of the corporate structure. And Greg said, I've said almost these exact words for years, and more recently to executives put in charge of a community they don't understand. I am in the awful position of saying things I believe without the company making an even single simple action of real change.
Yeah.
Which is strong words from, I mean, he's Wizards of the Coast sort of PR guy, isn't he?
Yeah.
That's strong words coming from their PR guy criticizing the company itself.
That's wow.
Yeah.
Crikey. Well, I mean, it's the right time to speak out about it.
Yeah, well, all times are the right time, but it's...
and I think, Orion, right, being a black creator, being a creator who is trans, right, that in itself, them speaking out when they had this huge opportunity and they could have taken it and profited off it, right, I think... It's good then that other people, it's inspiring people like Greg to also risk something and put something on the line by speaking up and speaking out. Because I do think that's really important. And hopefully Greg does have the ear of people who can really make some change.
Yeah,
so,
I mean, Greg's voice is definitely a powerful one.
Yeah.
And definitely an important and influential one, presumably within the company and outside the company.
For sure. Yeah.
So anyway, that's the bad news out of the way. Let's move on to nicer stuff, shall we?
Well, I don't know if I'd characterise it as bad news per se.
It's bad news for Orion.
It's tough news.
Hopefully it turns into something great for them.
News.
Yeah.
But it's like, it is news. I don't think I'd want to assign a moral value to someone speaking out. I think the speaking out is a good thing.
Okay. Right then. The Klingons are here.
Are they?
Star Trek Adventures for Modiphius. They have released a Klingon Empire book. And the interesting thing about this, although it's for Star Trek Adventures, it's not a supplement. It's a core rulebook. It repeats the core rules with a few, slight updates and minor changes. But it is a core rulebook. You can take that single book and you can play Star Trek Adventures, albeit from the Klingon side rather than the Federation side, without having to buy the existing core rulebook.
Oh, that's kind of like what Fantasy Flight Games did with their Star Wars books.
Yes, yeah. That's exactly what they did. Yeah. It's an interesting approach.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how many people are going to be jumping on.
Yeah, it's
for that.
It's interesting, right? How many people are going to say, I want to start with the version of this game where we get to play Klingons?
Yeah.
I gotta say, it sounds kind of fun.
It does.
Well, yeah.
I would absolutely play it. And I wonder if it's the more combat heavy version then of Star Wars or Star Trek Adventures, right? Because Klingons are a more warlike culture, right? So is it like the go and fight things and take their stuff, kind of? Is it the D&D version of Star Trek Adventures?
Well, I can tell you it's a nearly 400-page book.
Wow.
It's a big old book there. It's got a complete version of the Star Trek Adventures 2D20 system in there, which is obviously going to be a big chunk of that book. Guidance on how to create Klingon-focused Star Trek stories and characters. Big old extensive study of the Klingon Empire, history, culture, worlds, ships, technology, society, all the stuff you'd expect. An introductory adventure, and the rules, the 2D20 rules have been expanded on slightly to include rules for honor, which is a big part of Klingon society.
Culture. Yeah.
So I don't know how that works exactly, but that's kind of baked into the system.
All right, that sounds like that'll be pretty exciting.
Yeah. So if you want to be a Klingon, do you want to be a Klingon, Peter?
Yeah.
I mean, you look a bit like a Klingon.
That's true. I'll just frown more.
Right then, D&D Beyond. Let's go to D&D Beyond. Player Tools app.
Oh, yes, they've got a new player app or something, haven't they?
Which I haven't tried myself, but it's available on the Apple App Store, and the Google Play Store. And basically, it just manages your characters, tracks conditions and hit points and spell slots, and everything you'd want from a character manager.
Well, if you're using D&D Beyond, then you can already do that on the character sheet. Maybe it just makes it easier or something, I guess.
Well, I guess it's just about having a dedicated app, because the functionality was there in the web version, wasn't it?
Right. Yeah. You could on your phone already look at your character sheet in mobile and it looked nice and that kind of thing. But I think this allows you to download your characters too. So if you're in some place where you don't have Wi-Fi and you need access to your characters, which, I mean, these days there aren't that many games happening in person. Well, maybe in other places. In the United States, we're handling things very poorly. I don't know if you all know if that news has reached you, but
we've noticed.
But
Yes.
but in other places,
we're not doing a lot better, to be fair. But
Let's not turn this into the politics half hour.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
I have a lot to say on this. So maybe not A. Maybe not.
Yeah, so I think that's one of the big strengths too, is that there are often times where in a convention I'll get like invited to a D&D game right last minute. Oh, I'll whip up a character on D&D Beyond. Oh, there's no Wi-Fi. I don't, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
This will make it a lot easier.
Things on a PDF can be tricky as well.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
And I assume just a native app just means it will be just that bit faster as well, and that bit more.
Well, maybe.
That bit nicer to use. Well, in theory, anyway. That's why apps exist, isn't it?
Exactly. Yeah. One thing that I really appreciate about D&D Beyond is they have a big team, and so they do a lot of things, but they try not to put things out until they're really ready to go, right? And they say, this is in beta, this is in, they have a whole roadmap that they let people view. So you can see, like, they're working on a virtual tabletop. When it will show up, they're like, we don't know yet, but we're working on it.
Yeah. When it's ready.
Yeah.
I think D&D Beyond is probably the first really good tech partnership that Wizards of the Coast has had, because they've had quite a few over the last sort of 20 years or so, and a lot of them haven't worked out very well at all.
I think that was what really crippled 4th edition. If they'd been able to keep the promises, then might still be playing 4th edition, you never know.
Yeah,
maybe. But do you remember
I remember that?
Do you remember Codename Morningstar, or whatever that turned into?
Oh, yeah, that was what was supposed to launch with 5th edition, right?
Right.
Yeah.
I've never heard of it.
So that was a company that I can't remember their name now. This is terrible because I met them at Gen Con and everything, and they showed me a demo of their stuff. But anyway, they were basically the pre-D&D Beyond contractor before Wizards dropped them and moved to D&D Beyond instead, and they were working on a very similar set of tools. But for whatever reason, Wizards of the Coast decided to end their relationship with those guys, and they went on with D&D Beyond. And I think there were a lot of teething troubles with the Project Morningstar stuff, and it wasn't as extensive as people wanted it to be. And I think D&D Beyond have fulfilled the promise that
Definitely. Yeah, that was Trapdoor Technologies.
That was it, yes.
Yeah. And they're like an ebook company, right? They make a lot of ebooks and platforms for ebooks and things like that. So that was their idea, they were going to be able to put something like we have now with D&D Beyond out. But for whatever reason, that relationship fell apart.
I seem to remember, did they run a Kickstarter which failed?
Yes, that is correct. Yeah,
that was one of the nails in the coffin when they couldn't enthuse people enough to even back the Kickstarter. Yeah,
they lost the partnership, and then they said we're gonna do this for anything with an SRD was kind of their we'll still put it out, and then I think they wanted a lot of money and they didn't get close to it. Right, they wanted hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Yeah, it was a big ask, wasn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, wow, okay. Yes, there's still a website for them.
Are they still around, are they?
No, there's still a website for them. Oh, sorry. I just Googled it, so I was like, oh, okay. Yeah. Last update, June 27th, 2014.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, wow. And there's 3 posts in their blog. Wow, okay. Well, that project didn't do very well, did it? But yes, D&D Beyond is much better. I like making characters on it. Like, it's fun. I can knock one out in about 2-3 minutes now, which is pretty good.
Oh, gotcha.
It just works.
Let's talk some Critical Role.
Oh yes, let's.
It seems that we end up talking more about controversies than we do actually about D&D news these days. It just seems to be happening an awful lot, and Critical Role is. Well, this is kind of an anti-controversy because it turns out that someone accused them of something and an investigation took place, and it turned out that thing hadn't happened.
Right, it definitely hadn't happened. Oh, okay.
Well, as far as we know, is
that news?
Well, it's news. It's news to the extent that they hired counsel and made a press release. So they consider it important enough to bring to everyone's attention. So what happened was they were accused of commissioning work from one of their community members and then not paying that person for that work.
Wow. Okay.
And of course, their response immediately was, "Well, no, that's not the case. There's no employment or contractual relationship with this person. This person's never done any work for us." But they hired outside counsel to investigate it independently to find out what happened, turned over all their transcripts, because apparently this all happened via Discord, to investigate it and find out what happened. So what had happened was this person had approached them with complaints about online bullying and toxic behaviour in the Critical Role community. And one of their staff sort of lent a sympathetic ear and spoke to this person on Discord at length. This is what the press release says. In the interest of, being supportive, listening to the worries and issues that person had, taking them on board and so forth. But what happened was that person then asked them for a job as a consultant to deal with, I believe, bullying and toxic, give them sort of advice on dealing with bullying and toxic behaviour within the community, which as soon as that person started mentioning that, they sort of clearly said no. We're talking to you because you approached us, but no, we don't want to hire you for anything.
Right.
And then that person went public and said, well, I've just spent the last goodness knows how long giving them advice on how to manage toxic behaviour within their community, and claimed that consisted a contractual or employment type relationship of some kind.
Yeah. That is kind of weird, I've got to say.
Yeah, it sounds like what happened was essentially, the individual who I'm trying to find the name of, but that they felt they were taken advantage of, right? That they had come forth and said, "Hey, I would like to talk with you about this," and that Critical Role had said, "Oh, sure, we'd love to hear." And so they started to give some advice, and then Critical Role was asking for more and more feedback. This is their side of the story, right?
Yeah.
I am not in the Discord. I do not have the whole thing. And that they eventually said, I should really be paid, and I should really be paid for the work that I've done already. And Critical Role said, "Whoa, we never agreed on that." So it sounds like a miscommunication, right? And I feel for both parties here, because I think everybody, it sounds like, was maybe trying to do the right thing. But I don't have all the information, and I was not involved. So
basically all I know is what the press release says.
Right,
I haven't dived into it any deeper than that. So I've got Critical Role side of it in front of me, but I haven't got the other side.
Yeah.
But I think you're probably right. It is just a misunderstanding.
Mm-hmm.
But dealing with toxic behaviour and bullying in online communities is a problem these days. So, and it's not just a small problem; it's a big problem, and everyone suffers from it. Like the Critical Role community, the D&D community, all the communities we're involved in.
Yeah,
everything's. I'm sure automotive communities and
motorcyclists.
Any type of online community suffers from the same problems. I don't think it's.
Yeah, I think nowadays as well, especially with people just being, there's a lot of pent up people who are like really got a lot of anger and a lot of fear at the moment. So that sort of thing will come out online. It doesn't mean it's acceptable, but it's sort of understandable.
Yeah, I mean, I get.
Of course, you've got some people who are just awful.
Yeah, I mean, I got hit by quite a lot of it with emails and messages and stuff like that from.
Yeah, I was going to say you run a community, so
I'm actually looking at my website right now, and I've got 3 messages waiting for me, and I know each one of those is someone yelling at me. So I'll have a look at those later. But
sorry to hear that.
It's just a job. It's fine. Let's move on to Iron Kingdoms, shall we?
Yes.
Oh, isn't that like sort of steam jacks and black powder and so forth in a 50th setting?
Okay. Fantasy steampunk, I guess, is the way to put it. So Iron Kingdoms actually started. I remember when it started. It was in about 2001, and this was during D&D 3E. And Privateer Press produced a trilogy of 3 D&D adventures for the D20 system at the time, under the OGL, which weren't nearly as steampunk as the Iron Kingdoms has become since. They were a bit steampunk. And they were really, really good. They weren't pennies. They were really popular. I loved them. I ran all 3 adventures for my group at the time. But the Iron Kingdoms then evolved from that. It became an entire setting. There was a whole big monster book and a whole setting book. Then they developed their own RPG system, which was a D6-based, I think, RPG system linked to a miniatures war system, which is kind of where their focus went for quite a long time. And now it's kind of coming full circle in that they're now producing something called Iron Kingdom's Requiem, which is a new edition of their RPG powered by 5th edition.
Ooh, nice.
Oh.
So in the Iron Kingdoms, you can play things like gun mages, and you can use warjacks, and there's big steam trains. It's kind of a lot of this stuff you might say sort of is a little bit Eberron, but this predates Eberron by a good decade.
Yeah,
Right.
It's interesting to see this sort of circling right back round when they left D&D, did all their own stuff, and now they're coming back to 5th edition.
Yeah, it's funny. It feels like they're one of the last creators to do that, because a lot of people, when the OGL came out, started to circle back around, right? Because 4th edition didn't really have a great license for that, and so people had to go do their own thing. And now people are circling back around. And I think D&D having the marketplace dominance, right, that it does, it's like, well, Morris, you and I talked about this on Twitter, right? That when I talk about a non-D&D system that I'm working on, it's like, 13 likes. But if I make a D&D joke on Twitter, it's like 1,000 likes immediately.
That's just it. That's just the world. That's just how it is. Exactly the same for me. If I post a D&D news item, I'll get 200 replies within a day. If I post a non-D&D news item, I get a dozen if I'm lucky.
Yeah,
and that is just how it works, and it's okay. That's how it is. I mean, I don't mind, but it's not like I'm not doing fine. But it is interesting. Because they're not the only ones that have switched round. Have you seen the latest Monty Cook Games book? Numenera is now powered by 5th edition.
That's right.
They did a Kickstarter, I think it was late last year, maybe. All the books have shipped since, and now you can actually go and buy it from the shops. They've done a Numenera setting for D&D 5th edition, which is basically their world. Instead of using the Cypher system, they haven't stopped using the Cypher system, I hasten to add. They're still doing their entire Cypher system powered Numenera line, but they produced a setting book for D&D 5th edition for those who want to dive into Numenera without having to learn a new system.
Yeah.
So
it's really it's interesting, and I wonder, right? We're sometimes I think like people who are new to D&D, they play D&D for a couple years, and then they feel like, I'd like to try something else, right? Like I'd like to tell a superhero story or a spy story or whatever it is. A Judge Dredd story, shall we say. And I think now we're going to see people, especially with all of the weird Wizards of the Coast news that we've been seeing that doesn't always reflect them in a great light. We will see some people starting to try new systems. And I think having a 5e starter as a way to get into Numenera is actually pretty smart, right? Because it makes the barrier for entry then is lower.
Exactly. Yeah.
Because you need conceptual hooks for like a lot of games to make things happen. Because I've been looking at Espergenesis, which is like quite an exciting science fiction conversion of 5e, and a lot of the difficulty I'm having as someone thinking about running it is like trying to work out what's what do all these new names mean? What does everything mean?
Right.
Like, whereas there's sort of like an concept of an elf now. Like we've got generic fantasy so firmly embedded in the national consciousness. You put an orc or an elf into a thing, and people are like, "Oh, okay, that's an orc, that's an elf. I know what that is," even if they're not right.
Yeah, exactly.
And if you want to subvert expectations and play around with them, you can, but you have to try really hard. I think like things like Divinity Original Sin 2 said, you know what, elves eat people. And that's how they learn things.
Well, it's interesting with the Numenera thing, talking about different terminology. Numenera basically has kind of a warrior, a wizard, and a rogue, but they're called I can't remember, glaives, jacks, and something else.
Do you say knaves?
But they've got different. They've got. A lot of Monty Cook Games stuff and Monty Cook stuff has done that over the years as well. But they've got different names. But I've noticed on the description for Numenera's 5e setting, they have just called them Wizard, Ranger, and Rogue, rather than go with the Numenera specific names.
Interesting.
So I'm guessing that's, as you say, a conceptual barrier removed. by just getting rid of some of the terminology. It kind of feels a bit like jargon sometimes when you go into a new game and you don't know what the words mean, and you have to learn that entire terminology.
Mm-hmm.
Even if
like every game practically uses the term advantage.
Yeah, but in a different way.
It means something different.
Yeah. Or level or something.
Right, yeah. Sometimes they use level 2 or 3 times to mean different things.
Can't think of a game that does that.
I know.
I seem to recall there were originally discussions of the various uses of the word level in D&D for being things like rank, and there were like each one of those iterations were, I think one of them was level and the others were all different words.
Right.
And then for some reason they ended up all being, I think the spells were ranks, for example, rather than spell levels.
Yeah.
Which is kind of nice.
Yeah.
But like Order of the Styx is a fantastic bit about whether you should. We need to go down a level in the dungeon. It's like, but if we do, but we'll go up a level, meaning like in character level. It's like they're just having this who's on first style argument about we should go down a level so we can go up a level. But what? That doesn't make any sense. Yeah. I heard the joke much worse.
I was looking at Kickstarter the other day, and we've, as we all know, we've had a pandemic.
Yeah.
And
have we?
We still are. We still are, in fact. We still are. It seems the tabletop games on Kickstarter, despite this pandemic, have done very well so far in 2020.
Oh, nice.
It's true.
Yeah.
It's true.
Part of that is led by one game, a board game, Frosthaven, which broke some records and did 13 million all on its own.
Yeah, the sequel to Gloomhaven.
Yeah.
Like the sort of the uncanny valley of dungeon crawls.
Yeah. I mean, board games are an order of magnitude larger than role-playing games. So they always do much, much better. But there was a few interesting things to notice, because there was a sharp decline in products launched. So there were nearly quarter less products launched in March. And then in April, it was a third less. And in May, it was a third less. So a lot fewer projects were being launched. And I delayed mine. I was worried as well. So I'm sure lots of people were thinking that I was thinking, should I launch now? Should I wait? What's going to happen? And if I wait, will I then just be part of a glut of 1,000 people who all launch at the same time when the pandemic's over? And will I get lost? So it was a hard decision when to launch.
Yeah.
I don't know if you had those considerations when you guys launched Fantastic Bears.
Yeah, definitely. There was a lot of talk about when to launch and should we launch and what's a good time to launch. And Scott and Mike and I were sort of the opinion of like, well, things could be better in a few months, or they could be worse.
Yeah, exactly.
And so that's why we decided to launch with our original plan, because it was going to be a lot of work for us to revamp it, and we weren't sure if that work was going to be worth the reward.
Yeah.
And it did turn out that it was good for us, when we launched when we did and everything like that. So, and Morris, you're approaching the $100,000 US mark right now. So I assume you're pretty happy with your decision to launch too.
Yeah. I don't think the pandemic has negatively affected my Kickstarter in the slightest.
No. And I think people are eager to support smaller creators right now because of the pandemic, right? And you're going to use that money and you pay other small creators who worked on the book and that kind of thing. Yeah. So I'm glad that people are supporting Kickstarters right now, because it's helping people who could really use the money, and you get a great game. So that's great.
The stats show, and then this was a study done by ICO partners who analysed the whole tabletop games category. So, first of all, Kickstarter tabletop games category as a whole, so far this year, 2020, has made more money than any year previously.
Wow.
Which is astonishing. Just looking at the graph, it's sharply curving up. The number of products launched in March, April, and May went down, but those products that were launched, the the percentage of those that funded successfully was not affected. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So those that were launching were still funding just fine.
Wow.
Which is good news, I guess.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Huh. So what would it be like? So do you think the pandemic has affected the amount of money coming in, or do you think it would be this way even if the pandemic hadn't happened? Obviously, I feel like more products would have launched on Kickstarter.
Maybe. I mean, Frosthaven made like a third of the total money raised in May.
Yeah,
Massive.
that's true.
That's
true.
That's obviously made a big difference. Without that, I'm not sure what the stats would look like. I haven't got absolute. I have got absolute numbers in front of me, but I can't do the maths in my head right now looking at it. But without that, I don't know what it would look like. It on its own has raised 10% of the total for the entire year so far, which I suppose makes the total therefore 130 million. So it's hard to say. Hard to say. I don't know. All I know is I'm happy with how mine's going, and I don't think it's been affected by the pandemic at all.
Yeah, I agree. I agree completely.
Yeah, I would encourage people to just continue as normal when it comes to launching Kickstarters at the moment. And obviously loads of, like the Beowulf one funded great, and loads of them are funding really well. Your one, James, funded great.
I mean, having a quality product is going to help, though, because
That's
ultimately
true.
people are like, is it any good?
Yeah.
If you can't tell it's any good from the Kickstarter, you're going to have a bad time.
Yeah, but that's the same irrespective of a pandemic, though, isn't it?
Well, yeah, but it's like, it is an important factor, but are there any really good-looking Kickstarters that have failed to fund? Because it's basically the same sort of thing you've got to do. You've got to build up that sort of audience base first.
I think a good Kickstarter usually funds. If a Kickstarter doesn't fund, I don't think it's usually due to luck.
Yeah, I can definitely think of some products that I think like, hey, this was a great product and I backed it or whatever, but it didn't fund, and it's usually because the creator has a hard time getting the word out.
That doesn't help. I mean, it is difficult. It is very, very difficult. But
or they set a goal that is very high.
Well,
right?
That's just a mistake, though, isn't it? That's bad Kickstarter management when you do that. You've got to manage the actual Kickstarter itself well. You've got to set the right pledge total, pledge amounts. You've got to set the right funding goals. So you got to get it all that right, because if you get some of those numbers off, your Kickstarter is going to be,
exactly
negatively affected. I mean, I spend ages calculating these things to make sure I've got the numbers correct. I get spreadsheets out and everything. I get totally nerdy on it.
Oh, yeah, you should. That's a big project. You need to get your money in place.
Yeah, exactly.
Eric, perhaps we should move on slightly, because I feel we're in topic of the week territory rather than the quick blaze through the news. Perhaps we should be doing.
Okay, so I've got one last piece here. We have got a Tier 4 campaign for 5th edition with a Warlock theme.
What? Awesome.
Okay.
So
let's hear.
Yeah, I know a lot of people want more Tier 4 content. And this is an entire campaign. It's 10. It says 10 acts. I'm assuming that means 10 short adventures, I'm guessing.
Right.
So it's coming to Kickstarter soon. It's coming in September by Apotheosis Studios. And it's inspired by the art of a rock album called The Red Opera by a group called D&amp.
Yes.
I don't know them.
Apotheosis.
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 Yes.
Weird.
Yes.
Wow.
Oh no.
Wow.
No, they've got an H and an E, which is joined together with just. So it looks like apotheosis, and it's not. It is apotheosis. It's just that the E is just some prongs sticking out of the side of the H.
Oh, right.
It really does look like apotheosis.
Terrible kerning, the vein of readers.
It's the font. I apologise. It is apotheosis.
Yeah. Because apotheosis is a word that means ascendancy to Gotthard. So
yeah. No, it's just a font. It's Anyway, the Red Opera.
Weird. Sorry, I do beg.
The Red Opera. The Last Days of the Warlock.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. This is really fascinating. So D&amp, they do. God, I don't. if you've ever played like a Castlevania video game, that's what their music sounds like. It is like rock symphony with pipe organs and like full orchestral arrangements behind it.
So we're sort of talking
stuff.
prog rock here. Is that is that the thing?
And yeah, it's more like symphonic rock, like Trans-Siberian Orchestra, kind of. That's like a very loose analogy. But yeah, so it's this is kind of, I think this is going to be very cool. And the artwork for it, everything like looks really amazing that they've shown off so far.
Oh, the artwork's gorgeous, isn't it? Look at that. Lovely artwork.
And
that is... Yeah.
I'm worried about them because it's tier 4 content, right? The upper tiers of the game, I think a lot of people stay away from. And I think it's because it's hard to run, right? So hopefully this will have like a lot of good advice about that. And I'm definitely going to check it out when it drops because it looks really good. And the fact that it's inspired by a rock album really intrigues me.
Well, I am definitely going to be checking it out. They've sent along some previews, which are on my website, and we'll stick the links to that in the show notes. And that just shows some of the really, really gorgeous page spreads and some of the art that they've got going on there. And you can sign up to be notified by the Kickstarter already. You know, the whole Kickstarter coming soon page where you click on it and Kickstarter will email you when the project launches. So you can do that now, ready for its September launch. Kobold Press. So let's have a look. Kobold Press, they've just welcomed Amanda Heyman, I want to say, as editorial director. She used to work for Paizo as the managing developer of Starfinder, and she is now working for Kobold Press as their new editorial director.
Yeah.
Which is great news. Yeah.
That is huge news.
Could you give me some context then? Because I don't think I don't understand why it's huge.
So Kobold Press, I feel like for the last several years has really been building up a lot of like staff that it has. So Kobold Press is obviously run by Wolfgang Bauer, and they put out a lot lot of third-party content, the Tome of Beasts, Creature Codex, right, all that kind of stuff.
I think it's probably fair to say they're probably the premier D&D third-party company.
I definitely think so. And so the fact that they can, I wouldn't say they're poaching people from Paizo necessarily, but the fact that someone from Paizo would say, I would like to go work at Kobold Press, I think says a lot about how Kobold Press is doing, or a lot about how Paizo is doing, I guess. Or both, maybe both, right? But I mean, Paizo seems to be doing fine. So I think that's great news for Kobold Press, and great news for Amanda too. And that's an exciting partnership.
Yeah. There was also hiding in that announcement. There's a live stream set in Kobold Press's default 5e setting, Midgard.
Oh yeah,
and she is going to be the GM of that live stream. That was buried in the announcement there.
Yeah. I know that Dan Dillon for a while has done a live stream, right? He's a WotC employee now, but he has continued to keep that up in Midgard. And I know that the Crafting Muse also does a Midgard stream for them. So they're clearly beefing up their streaming as well. That's great.
Yeah. No, it sounds to me definitely like Kobold Press is becoming, it's definitely the premier.
They're an excellent third-party source, and I regard their stuff as very reliable, like in the sense that it feels like really a lot better playtested than some of the other things I see.
I mean, they're sort of in that same field as sort of Green Ronin, and I always sort of saw them as smaller than Paizo, but it looks like maybe they're creeping up there towards Paizo levels. I don't know how big the difference is or how big the gap is, or Monty Cook Games or something like that. There's that group of companies sort of in Seattle which are kind of similarly sized, and they all kind of have ex-Wizard of the Coast staff leading them.
Right.
And they all do really, really, really high quality, really good, which they should do because, they've got really talented people with experience in the industry running them. So,
yeah, definitely. Good pedigree for sure.
Yeah, that's the phrase. Yeah, good pedigree. Right, I do believe we have finished the news.
It's time to play our favorite game. It's time to play the game. Our favorite game in all the world. Guess the Kickstarter from just the name.
Right, shall we play our favourite game in all the world?
Yes, I have been looking forward to this since last podcast.
remind me who won last time. Was it you, James?
I think Peter might have won, actually. I think Peter won.
Are you sure? That doesn't sound right.
That doesn't sound like Peter.
Yes.
Right.
And Russ is doing the scorekeeping anyway.
I am delegating.
I think it was a tie, and this is going to be our dramatic rematch here.
Yeah.
It's the Rocky 2 of our...
Yeah.
I feel you're taking this a lot more seriously now, James.
This is a true blood feud now. It's
Really? A blood feud? What? Oh, okay. Yes, I suppose I can join in. That's why
I am because it's so serious and so important. I am putting the scoring in the hands of Hudson, my dog, this week. So Hudson will be scoring. That can't be. I can't think of anything fairer than that.
I agree. Nothing fairer.
Right. Who would like to go first?
Would you like to go first, James, or shall I?
Yes. Well, when I was on here last time, I did say that choosing to go second is the coward's way. So since you've thrown the choice to me, I must. I have to choose to go first now. Because I am not a coward.
but you do keep losing, so yeah. I'm saying. I mean, that's okay, James. I don't judge. I appreciate your bravery.
I would rather.
Peter's putting on his gauntlets now. Look at that. He's
That's right. I'd rather go down a brave man than win a coward. That's I'm saying that now in case I lose.
Okay. So you want to go down? All right, I'll do my best to oblige. Right. Yes. Oh, what's this? Is this my handbag full of kittens? Must be time for the milk. Right.
So our favourite game in all the world, the game where I read out the name of a Kickstarter and you guess what it is from just the name, and we'll be starting with James. So James, are you ready?
I am ready.
Right. What is this? What is Project Infinite Hole?
Take your mind out the gutter.
Project Infinite Hole is a horror Starfinder campaign about a black hole that keeps expanding and is going to swallow the universe.
It is not. It is not that.
So close.
What it is a paranoia boxed set of experimental devices to test. 64 lovingly crafted pages with 40 experimental devices from the R&D labs. A book of 80 pages describing this Project Infinite Hole group in detail, including how it works, new locations, NPCs. A mission book full of 128 pages giving you missions to play a paranoia campaign, and an R&D deck with 120 cards with surveillance devices, weapons, core tech, apps, defensive devices, armor, and all that lovely stuff.
It's got it all.
It's got it all.
Yeah. That sounds like an interesting Kickstarter, but I would never have got that from the name.
Well, it is one of those ones with a colon. You know, I always miss out the colon part. So it's Project Infinite Hole, because the colon always explains it. So Project Infinite Hole, colon, an R&D source box for the Paranoia RPG.
Oh, sure. Yeah, that's the answer. That's the answer.
Obviously,
right
I couldn't read that bit.
Of course.
So unfortunately, James, you have scored how many points, Hudson? Where have you gone, Hudson? Oh, he's vanished. The scorekeeper has gone.
I guess there's those bits, and so 0 points.
0 points, I guess.
Yes, but remember, we did say it's like golf at the beginning. So, so I'm winning. I'm winning right now.
All right, then. Peter, can you score more than 0 points? Unlikely. But we can give
Let's see what we can do.
We can give it a try. If it's any comfort, you get to listen to me trying to pronounce a foreign word.
Sorry. I should probably wait till you've actually tried to say it before I start laughing at you.
Yeah, I might do it really well for you know. Unlikely, but we can give it a try. Okay. So, journal Dindochine. Indochine.
Oh, Journal Dindochine. So that would be, I guess, a Vietnam-inspired sort of game. It's all about the Indochina, which I think is the name for Vietnam. Maybe it's actually even before then. Maybe it's like sort of a the American involvement is actually about the French involvement in Vietnam, which didn't go super well, like D&B and Foo being like the classic example where they're like, nah, we need to leave. Okay, so yeah, I guess it's a journal, which implies a storytelling game of some sort. So I guess it's sort of a war memoir style thing. How would you make that work as a game? I'm not sure. I guess it's got like a rule system. I'm hoping for something that's got a bit of melancholy, a bit of sad to it. I don't think it's an action-packed one. I think it's like very much a mood-driven and narrative story game, but I can't think of what I would use to run that. But yeah, that sounds pretty interesting.
Wow.
What?
That's exactly what it is.
Really? Wow! My hat is off to you, sir. That was impressive. That was very impressive.
Other than picking a system.
Yeah.
And it's for Call of Cthulhu.
Of course.
Oh, of course. Yeah, that would make sense.
Horror and intrigue in French colonial era Vietnam.
Yeah.
Wow. Peter, that is astonishing.
Yeah. Are you cheating? Did you back this Kickstarter? Did you?
That was just lucky because it's a good name though. Because like that's the first thing that popped into my head when I heard it. So yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm going to have to give you a full 7 points out of 7 for that.
Woohoo!
Yeah.
Well done. Well done.
That was impressive.
Yeah.
Impressive.
So, Peter,
sometimes the dice just aren't in your favour.
Peter takes strong lead.
That's okay. I'm going to get 14 on this next
round,
one.
Everything to play for.
Second round.
Yeah.
Okay, this is interesting.
Uh-oh.
The Legends of Omeria starter set. Now, I wouldn't normally read out the entire title like that because that kind of gives it away, but there's a slight twist to it, which you're going to have to get for the points.
Ooh.
Okay, Legends of Omeria starter set. Well, this is obviously the starter set for Legends of Omeria.
Yep.
So
you don't get points for that.
Let's see, Legends of Omeria. I'll be honest. Okay, so I'm going to say Legends of Omeria is its own RPG, right? That this is something this person is starting, but they're running it on. I'm going to say Fate, that they're using Fate, and it's like a whimsical adventure romp where you play like a bunch of farmers rising up to meet a dark overlord who is oppressing them. This dark overlord, he wears like a breathing apparatus because he was on Nustafar and he got his legs cut off by his old master. So that is my guess, that it's Star Wars with Fate.
You are exactly right.
Yes, I did it.
No, you're not. Right, so the weird twist with this is, it is a starter set for Legends of Omeria, but it is a D&D 5th edition starter set. And I've never heard of anyone doing this except for Wizards of the Coast.
Oh, that is a twist.
So this is a really interesting thing. So this is a D&D 5th edition starter set produced by someone other than Wizards of the Coast.
Huh.
That's
interesting.
By DM Dave. You might be familiar with DM Dave from the large number of Facebook ads. Have you seen those? I'm seeing them all the time in my feed. Loads and loads. This guy's spending a lot of money on Facebook ads.
Right.
Yeah, that does ring bells, like DM Dave and Facebook ads.
He's got a Patreon with like 13,000 backers or something. Or is it $13,000? One of the two.
it's a lot of money.
Yeah.
So
which is probably why he's able to afford all these Facebook ads. But so he's producing a 5th edition starter set, which comes with everything you need to play the world's most popular game. It's 64-page adventure, an improved version. He says improved version of the classic 5th edition rule set. I don't know how it's improved, but it's improved. It's got miniatures. It's got dice. It's got battle mats.
Wow.
This is ambitious.
Yeah, it really is.
I mean,
it
it's
really
not cheap.
is.
You're looking at $70 for all that. So, like, the Wizard of the Coast starter set is, what, $20-ish, I think? Paizo's one's about $30, I think. This one is $70, but you do get a lot of stuff.
Right.
And it's funded. It's done $56,000 with 6 days to go, so it is funded. I'm actually tempted to back this one. This is a very deluxe starter set.
Yeah.
Right. Legends of Fomeria. Right.
Yeah.
Good for him.
I just find it really interesting seeing someone doing a D&D starter set and them not being Wizard of the Coast.
Yeah, it is. That's fascinating. That was a good twist, I gotta say.
It would never even have occurred to me to do that.
Now, I would like to argue that we don't know that there isn't a Dark Lord as part of this adventure. It's Schrodinger's Dark Lord, right?
Okay,
I don't feel you should quibble with the judging. Because otherwise we'll be here all day.
I mean, I'm already at 0. What could go wrong?
I do agree that there is no way to know that there definitely isn't a Dark Lord, but I will say there is no evidence to suggest that there is a Dark Lord.
That's fair. That's fair. I accept your humble ruling, Judge.
Although, if Darth Vader does turn out to be in this boxed set, then
we shall be covering from the news when Disney sues
you will
the man
score 1 million points.
That's right. I will gloat retroactively if that happens.
Okay, then.
You should do that.
So, unfortunately, James has scored 0 points so far. And Peter has scored 7 points. So, all you have to do is not score -7 points to win.
Yay.
And I think what we will go with is... Which one of these should I choose? We won't go with mythological figures and maleficent monsters, because that...
just well. I have no idea what that would be.
Let's go with Things Heroes Say.
I wonder if this is like the Handbook of Heroes, which is a well-established comic strip. In this case, I guess Things Heroes Say would be... I guess what I would expect from something like that is maybe like a set of comic strips and so forth, which all have just D&D jokes. Basically, it's a book of D&D memes. Not to put it too fine, with lots of nice hand-drawn art, but probably not too big. But yeah, I'm hoping probably start off black and white, going to full colour. A book of RPG-related humour.
You are correct. Except the illustrations are a lot more lavish, big, and full colour than I think you're expecting. It's not comic book art. This is done by a professional illustrator and concept artist. It's gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous art. Absolutely beautiful art. He's a London-based creator.
Even better.
Yeah, it's absolutely beautiful, actually. And it's accompanied by sort of phrases that things like dead or alive, that thing is going in my lunch pack, or is this a challenge, you scary abomination? You think you can stop my thunder? Things that D&D heroes might say.
Yeah. This is, what's it, Bryn G. Jones? Yes, okay. A fantasy art book / RPG phrase book.
Already funded. It's done $5,000 out of a £350 goal. 7 days to go.
Nice.
I like this enough that I am going to back it.
That's a really cool idea.
Yeah. It sort of reminds me a little bit of Jacob, who did the Scythe art. I cannot remember. He's got Eastern European name that I cannot. Jacob Rosowski, who did all those like sort of battle mechs and so forth, and things like Are You Okay? Yeah, it's got that sort of theme to it. Oh, okay, these are, and it's got like sort of word art, like pull up your socks, boys. It's a big old drag. Yeah. Oh, that is pretty nice actually. Oh,
yeah, I like that.
Yes.
And with that, I think we have to call an end to this week's favourite game in all the world. And sadly, we do have to announce Peter the winner. Much to my...
you destroyed me, Peter. Just totally left me wrecked in this one. So, my hat is off to you, but I'll be back. So I have to say.
Shame. Yes, an adventure. We have been asked to rescue the prince from the maleficent wizard.
What's in it for us?
Well, the Queen offered us 500 gold each.
I don't even get out of bed for 500 gold. Tell her 5,000 gold in advance or the deal's off.
I don't know, Grimy. I mean, that's a lot of money.
We are not a charity.
Fine. I'll tell her. Now, let's plan the journey. I think the southern route is the fastest. Wait, what are you doing?
I'm just standing here in the shadows.
Yeah, mate, I can see that. I was trying to talk to you. Can you step out of that corner, please?
You can still see me.
No, yes, but you're dressed all in black and standing quite remarkably still.
Yes, it is my way.
It is not really conducive to a free exchange of ideas.
I do not wish to exchange ideas.
Fine. Well, anyway, the southern route circles the edge of the Great Desert.
No.
No?
No.
No what?
We will not take the southern route.
Why ever not?
We shall take the northern route, through the forest of twilight, and travel only under the light of the black moon.
But why?
It is my way.
The northern route will take twice as long, 3 times if we wait for the black moon.
Indeed.
Look, you're not being very helpful there.
No.
Fine. The northern route it is. I only hope the prince will still be alive when we get there.
And I shall travel alone.
What?
I shall strike a lonely, solitary figure silhouetted against the sky.
But Grimy, what about me?
Well, you may travel behind, at a distance of 1 mile.
I what?
I shall stand silent, emanating a sense of desolation and heartache.
And that will help free the prince, will it?
No.
Then why do it?
It is my way.
Look, maybe you should just do the thing your way, and I'll do it my way.
I'll walk in darkness, forever alone.
Yeah, you do that, mate. You do that. I'm going to take the southern route and rescue the prince.
I shall ride forlorn, my black cape shrouding me in mystery and stoic resolution, my face unseen and my motives unknowable, my very aspect one of emptiness, as though my soul were distant and remote. I shall be foreboding, a harbinger, a lone wolf, aloof and reserved, my countenance eerie and unnerving, enveloped in an air of cool confidence and dark secrecy. I shall be an enigma, a phantom in the night, a ghost in the shadows, a whisper on the breeze. All who witness me shall... wait, where did he go? Hello? Don't leave me behind. I'm scared of the dark. Right then, so let's talk about your brand new science fiction or science fantasy, is it?
Science fantasy. Oh. Yes, yeah. Although I will accept
if we're going
science
to make
fiction.
The distinction.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, yeah, because this is important.
I feel like science fantasy falls under science fiction, even though like a hardcore nerd is going to get in your face and yell at you about how they.
Yeah, I think it's a subcategory of science fiction. It's
okay, so science fantasy. Are we talking like full on space opera? Or have we got some wriggle room in the science fantasy?
So it's very space opera-y, I would say. Yeah.
Like, where are we on a scale of 1 to Grey Lensman?
So that's a good question. We're pretty far into like Somebody the other day said it reminded them of like 80s, really weird, almost psychedelic. And I think that's probably a pretty good description. So,
Right.
yeah.
Well, before we dive any deeper, I think we should first quickly introduce it, because we haven't actually mentioned it yet.
I don't know. I think just like talking about it
Without actually saying what it is.
Right, never say the name. Never,
So this is
that's what everyone wants in their publicity.
so this is Burn Bryte, which is your brand new RPG, which is designed specifically for use on the Roll20 platform.
Yes. Yes, yeah, exactly. Yeah, it kind of, obviously I would prefer there not be a pandemic right now, but it kind of hit at a good time in the sense that a lot of people have learned to use Roll20 in the last couple months, right? And have transferred their games on there and that sort of thing. So, but we've been working on the game for more than 3 years, so it's exciting for it to be out now. Yeah.
So what prompted you to, because to me, I know you as a D&D guy.
Yeah.
Your blog is all about D&D. You've released DM Guild stuff. You're involved with D&D Kickstarters. Mainly when you talk on Twitter, you're talking about D&D. So what is it that made you want to try something different and delve into an original RPG?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I've always wanted to do some original RPG stuff. I like D&D a lot, obviously, right? Like I'm so immersed in it, and I think it's a really fun game, and I like designing for it. But I've always wanted to do things with other RPGs. And Morris, we earlier we just said, right, like getting away from D&D can be hard because a lot of people play it, and you can find an audience there, and when it's your income, right, it's sometimes hard to take the risk and leave D&D behind. But this was so I wrote a adventure. I guess it's kind of like a starter set for Roll20 when the OGL first came out.
Right.
And the idea was it was a D&D adventure that taught you how to play D&D and taught you how to use Roll20. And it's available for free on Roll20 still, actually. It's called the Master's Vault. And while I was working on that, I was talking with Nolan T. Jones, who's the CEO of Roll20, and who was sort of shepherding that project along. He really wanted to see it about like, you should do more original content. You have this great platform, and he said, oh yeah, we're thinking about that already. And so we sort of kicked the idea around a little bit, and he said, I'd love to do an original role-playing game, like sort of how Netflix used to only have shows that other people made, and now Netflix has a lot of their own stuff. I think that was kind of the like, maybe we'll dip our toe into original content and see how it goes. And so, we started to kick it around, and then I put together a design team, and we kind of went from there. We knew that Roll20 was interested in sci-fi, and so we started to kick around ideas, and it was funny so the whole idea of Burn Bryte, and Bryte is spelled Bryte, and the idea of a bright in this world is an age, right? So like there's the exploration Bryte is their age of exploring space and finding stuff like that, right? And so in the Burn Bryte, there is this phenomenon that has surrounded the Olaxis galaxy, which is kind of this last galaxy in existence, and it's slowly closing in. And it looks like this bright orange kind of borealis effect. And as it touches planets and people and spaceships and asteroids and moons and stuff, it disappears, and those things are never seen or heard from again. And so it's like, what is this phenomenon that is slowly destroying our galaxy and our entire existence? We don't say. We give some suggestions of what it might be, but it's kind of up to the GM. And so that idea actually came about because we're lazy. So, because when we sat down to do sci-fi, we were like, wow, space is so big, and there could be so many planets, and you could go anywhere and do anything. And we were like, that sounds like a lot to design. How do we not do that? And so we decided to have the world, the universe ending.
We'll palm it off on the GM. So they were like that.
Exactly.
So how fast is this thing closing in then? Is this kind of like everything's going to be gone in 100 years, 1,000? How?
So that's people kind of estimate that maybe we have like 100 to 500 years left.
Oh, wow.
Right?
That's fast.
Yeah. So it is fast, but it's also enough that like your character is probably not going to be there at the very end, right? And so the game is sort of about like there's this hopeless situation. Can your character still be a good person in the face of all this, right? Like, will they still make the decision to save people? Will they still make the decision to help out, to share, all that kind of stuff in the face of people who are profiting off of this, people who are panicked, and so they don't care that they're, shooting their friends out of an airlock to save on food, right? Because as every planet disappears, resources disappear, homes disappear, all that kind of stuff. So that's a big part of it. Is the burn is shaping everything that is now happening in the galaxy. Alliances are falling apart. Wars are happening. These giant guilds that exist are challenging people and taking up all the resources and that kind of thing. And so your characters are kind of like the people in the universe who are going to help the downtrodden, hopefully.
Right.
So that is sort of the central idea. And then the other thing, so this is where we get kind of weird with it because it's a universe where there's magic, right? And so like all the technology is powered by magic and can do some really incredible kinds of things. And your spaceship is powered by this entity that is summoned inside of it and bound to the spaceship. And you can ask them and tell them what to do and stuff like that. So it's a big part of like, we wanted to capture that science fantasy feel of going on adventures and fighting against forces that are bigger than you and hopelessness and things like that. So that is a big part of it.
Is it John Scalzi with the God Engines?
I'm sorry?
John Scalzi with God Engines, or is it someone else I'm thinking of?
I don't know.
Taking an entity, binding it into your spaceship to help you fly around the place.
Oh, cool. I do not know. I do not know.
I thought maybe that was an influence, but sounds awesome. So yeah, you got stuff that you can hang things off, because science fiction is such a huge field, you can't be expected to keep up with all of it. Yeah.
Oh, totally.
Totally. So what sort of adventures do you tend to have when you're in this sort of, not quite desperate, but there's definitely a sense of impending doom and gloom? What's the sort of adventure you might find yourself, or PC might find themselves going on?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So Roll20, right, we wanted to play to the strengths of Roll20. Roll20 was originally built for 4th edition Dungeons & Dragons.
Yeah.
And so maps, right, were a big part of 4E, big part of Roll20. And so we have a lot of adventures that we're designing or have already put out that kind of feel like dungeon crawly in space, right? The first adventure is about going to save a group of people from a cult, and this cult worships the burn, right? This universe-ending phenomenon, they think that if they worship it, when it finally comes to take them, they'll be rewarded, right? And so they sacrifice people to it. And so they've captured a whole bunch of sort of like displaced refugees who have had their homes destroyed by the burn, and now they've taken them to this abandoned spaceship at the very edge of the burn, and it's up to the characters to go save them. So that is the first adventure. Going through like derelict space stations, crystal caves on a planet, that kind of thing. Like, so that's a big part of it. And then space travel and space exploration is a really big part of it. The galaxy, you live on your spaceship. And so again, playing to Roll20's strength, one of the big things you do during character creation is you and your friends grab a spaceship map and you build like the rooms on the spaceship together, right? You can drop in and swap out different components and customizable and stuff like that.
Resize them.
Exactly. Yeah.
So you can custom build your own spaceships, and that's part of the character creation session.
Yeah, exactly.
I
So
know.
you all build your characters, and then any leftover money you have at the end, after you buy your equipment, goes into a group pool, and you use that group pool to buy stuff to trick out your spaceship. So that's kind of, and that's a big thing because spaceship combat happens on that map. So when you're in spaceship combat, right, like the one thing we wanted to avoid is a lot of times in a role-playing game, there's like the pilot character, right, who doesn't do anything for 3 sessions, and then for 2 hours of one session, they do everything, and everybody else just sits there, right? And it's that's not fun.
That's so boring.
And
then there's the converse, which is someone said, they said to you as a GM, I'm taking the ace feat, I've got all the piloting and driving skills, and you're like, yeah.
Exactly. I guess I better shoehorn in some space battles here, right?
Yeah.
And so the idea in Bryte is that during spaceship combat, you're running around all over this spaceship map to do different things. So you might run to the engines and, jury rig them to give some extra power, and then run over to a cannon and shoot a cannon at some people while your friends are like running to the pilot controls to do some stuff. And then somebody else is repelling boarders, and somebody else is putting out a fire that's just started on your ship, and that kind of thing.
That does sound fun. Yeah.
So we used, the map. That ship map is a really big part of it. And then the other thing is, it's an original system, And when I say original, nothing is new under the sun. And I'm sure that we have mechanics that other people have used before, but we're not using any particular engine or anything like that to make it. And it's something you can play at a physical table, but Roll20 makes it a lot easier. It's like a skill-based system, and so each skill has a different die size associated with it: D4, D6, D8, D10, or D12. The bigger the die, the better you are with that skill. And
we've been discussing the way it's supposed to work. I gotta say, it took a long time for us to work out that you'd roll doubles on 5d4. Yeah. We weren't smart people.
That. If you're rolling more dice than the number of sides that type of dice has, then you're going to get a double. Right. Yeah. But the
exactly. So, yeah, that's true.
So have I got this right? So the idea of the system is you've got a die size based on how good you are. So it might be like D8s, you're really good at it. D4s, you're not so good at it. The complexity of the task, the higher the number, the more difficult it is, and that tells you how many of those dice you have to roll. And then if you roll doubles, you fail. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah. So if you roll doubles, if any of your dice match, you fail. And so And that's the basic idea. And when you fail, it's not just you failed to do the thing. It's something goes wrong.
Right, yeah.
So you might hurt yourself or an ally or break a piece of equipment or that kind of thing. So that's why there's always some sort of risk associated with failure. And so we roll to see, like, it's assumed your characters are competent and can usually do what they want to do. We roll to see if you fail. And that has worked out pretty well. Especially in combat, because the way combat works is on your turn, you can take any number of actions you want until you decide you're done or until you fail. So it's kind of like a push your luck. Are you going to keep going and keep trying to take actions, knowing that you might make things worse if you do? And so that has been really fun.
I think that is a pretty original system. I've not heard of that before. So you came up with that yourself? Was that a group effort? How do you come up with a system like that? Because there's got to be some weird probabilities going on with that as well, which...
Great question. Yeah. So one of the things we did was we included in the game, there's a probability table. And the reason for that is, right, it's not the same. Like when you increase the complexity, it's an exponential increase, not an incremental, right? So like in D&D, when your DC goes from 10 to 11, that means it's 5% harder, right? And when you go from 11 to 12, it's another 5% harder. That's not how it works in Bryte. It's all different based on the number of the complexity and the size of the die and all that kind of stuff. So we put a chart in there to help GMs understand, like, even increasing the complexity by 1 is going to make it a lot harder.
Yeah.
Right? Especially when you cross that threshold of 4 to 5. There is a big difference there, no matter what kind of die you're rolling.
Okay.
But so it was a group effort. And so the design team, I have to shout out, it was me and a guy named Jim McClure, who I think really isn't doing much in RPGs anymore. And then a woman named Kat Cool, who hosts the Autonomic podcast, and she used to host the Campaign podcast on One Shot. And then Darcy Ross, who works for Monty Cook Games now. Yeah. So that was the sort of the main design team. And we, Jim actually originally came up with this idea and mechanic, and then we all sort of worked on it and refined it together.
So how much playtesting did you have to do with that mechanic specifically? Because it is, I mean, I am fascinated by the mechanic because it's an interesting one. And it's also one of those ones that I think I would struggle to come up with myself. And it's hard to kind of visualize the probabilities with it. So I'm assuming you did quite a lot of playtesting and probably spreadsheets to work out what the different probabilities of things.
Definitely. Yeah. And that chart was one of the first things that we wanted to work out to see, like, is this going to be fun? And it did, it aligned with some research we had about, like, how fun, what is the fun number of time to succeed on something versus not, right? So we looked at some sort of casino theories about, like, what keeps people pushing their luck and all that kind of stuff. And we did a lot of playtesting. We had a playtest with Roll20 Pro and Plus subscribers where we got their feedback. We did a lot of internal playtesting. And I also, I did work with my friend who teaches calculus.
Right.
He and I said, like, can you come up with a formula for this to help me out? And he did. And it is like a wild formula.
Sweet.
Yeah, no, I can imagine. Because basically it's going to be the lower your dice size,
the harder it is.
And the more dice you're rolling.
Right.
Yeah, that's right. The lower your dice size and the more dice you're rolling, the more difficult it is. And then you reverse those two. So you're basically turning two dials at the same time, aren't you? Kind of.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Like if you're rolling 2d20, it's 1 in 400 chance of messing up.
Yeah. And that's, we do recommend, and this is in the rules, that, like, sticking most of the time between complexity 2, 3, and 4 is really the sweet spot for the game, because you do want to, if you have so many complexity 5s, it's going to make it very hard to succeed, but also you're not going to be able to use most of your skills, since you start with a lot of D4 skills. And you want to use those D4 skills because when you use one skill of every die size, which you can check off on your character sheet as you're going, you get what's called a Nova Point, and Nova Points activate your, like, big superpower kind of abilities. One of the things in Burn Bright is you don't play humans. There is no human species. And so it's all of these species that have these different powers associated with their forms. And some are humanoid creatures, right? Like there's a big crystalline creature that basically looks like a human made out of crystal. There's a cat race called the Eno that looks like, a species called the Eno that looks like cat people, right? So we've got that kind of thing. And then there are some really wild things. Like you can be a swarm of 100,000 bugs that shares a single hive mind together. Or you can be a slug that wears corpses as a second skin. So like when somebody dies, these giant slugs can enter their body and kind of puppet them like corpses. So there's some weird stuff.
So it's very much a sort of Star Wars-y type of universe when you walk into the cantina and you see all these different types of aliens of all different shapes and sizes.
Exactly, right? And that's what we kind of wanted to... We wanted the feel of like a Star Wars, or even something like Guardians of the Galaxy with respect to action, right? So hopefully people have a lot of fun when they play it, because that's the idea, is like... It's the end of the universe and everything, but your characters are the ones who are daring to hope and do good things. And my hope is that I wanted to design a game where failing was just as fun as succeeding, right? And some of the things that can happen when you fail are wild, and they'll make you go, oh no, but everybody will be laughing and that kind of thing at the table. So that's the hope.
So, in terms of player characters then, so you don't have any humans. So for a starting character, how many choices have you got in terms of different species?
We have 8 species. So, and we've got 40 what are called story paths. So story paths are little arcs, and they're how your character levels up and advances in the game. And they have broad terms like revenge or, rivalry or make art, right? Not make art. I think it's create masterpiece is what it's called. And so these are they're 5 events, and the GM can kind of work them into the story, interweave them with the story that they're telling. And each time you complete an event on this story path, you get a little boost. Maybe your skills increase, or you get a new ability, that kind of thing. And they branch a little bit. So like revenge, maybe at the end you choose not to take revenge. Well, that's you get a different advancement than if you don't, that kind of thing. And the idea is like, hey, this gets everybody to kind of engage with the story because it's the way you advance and level up.
That's really interesting. That's a really novel take on the idea of a life path system. I'm not.
Yes.
Yeah, it's event based rather than occupation based.
Exactly. Yeah, and credit has to go to Kat Cool for that one. She brought that idea, and then again we all worked together on it and refined it and everything.
It's brilliant. I love it. I absolutely love it. I might steal it.
So, Roll20 is very much about the bits, like the tokens and so forth. And if you have the pro subscriber levels, you've got access to dynamic lighting, you get special effects. What are the things that make it really good for Roll20? Why? Yeah, how are you taking advantage of the functionality?
Definitely. So the big thing is, obviously building a
spaceship.
Spaceship, yes, thank you. Building a spaceship together, right, is a lot easier to do in Roll20. Because of the way the dice work and it's a little funky, that is all kind of automatically handled in Roll20. You click the skill you want to use, it asks you to input the complexity, and then it tells you whether you succeeded or failed. And you can see your die rolls and things like that. So taking care of sort of the automation where we can was really important. But then within combat, there are a lot of rules in combat that take advantage of so you can put markers on your tokens in Roll20, and you can use those to track who's attacking who, because the way combat initiative works is it's divided up into 2 stages. Well, really 3. The bad guys declare what they're going to do. Then all the players get to act to try to interrupt what's happening. Right? It's that moment.
When you say tokens, you mean like the little colored dots and targets things. Okay, right.
So you can put those on your miniature in Roll20, right?
Yes.
Exactly. You've got colored dots, and Bryte actually is going to have some custom ones as well that are included. So that's part of it is within combat and high adventure. That's a big part of it, and then also whenever you fail a skill roll. You can roll on a big random table, and the table is right there, and you literally click a button and it tells you what the result is, right? You don't have to roll and compare. And so again, all things that can be done at the table, but Roll20 makes them faster and easier. The other thing is tracking your skills, right? You check off each time you use a skill, you want to check it off to make sure you're getting a Nova point. You're not going to wear a hole in a character sheet by checking off and erasing and checking off, right? It does make it a lot easier in that sense too. So, and then you do sometimes roll, especially in combat, a lot of dice, right? You might be rolling
big buckets.
60-10 and all that kind of stuff, which a lot of people, right? A lot of people we know have, because they're like super hardcore role players.
Mega nerds, yeah.
But not everybody has, 60/12.
Right.
And so Roll20 makes that easier too. Yeah.
Yes, that's very true.
Yeah.
Like fudge dice, playing cards, you've got a lot of stuff available to you. Yeah, and that's true. The cards, so the cards are actually used for safety, right? For like as a safety tool when you're playing the game. So there's a safety tool called the support flower, where you like draw a flower, and depending on what petal, you can touch a petal of the flower to say like slow down, stop, or keep going. So Roll20. You deal out, everybody gets a bunch of cards that say, keep going, stop, and slow down. But when you play a card, it's totally anonymous. Nobody has any idea that it was you who said, hey, can we please stop this scene? So, it gives a little more anonymity. Like maybe you're too nervous to touch the X card because you don't want to ruin people's good time, or you don't want them to be mad at you for it. This can help you do that anonymously. Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So in terms of support, what do you get initially? Because it's about $40 odd or something like that, I think, isn't it? Yeah.
So if you want the bundle, right, you can buy just the starter set, which is an adventure that comes with quick start rules and pre-gen characters and adventure ready to go. That's $10. If you want just the core game without the starter set, you can get that, which is going to be, I think it's $29.99, or you can buy them together. Plus, it comes with a bunch of art packs and exclusive art and stuff like that. That is $49.99. You can also just buy the art packs individually as well on the marketplace. So there's a lot of different ways you can buy and consume Bryte, and we haven't announced the specifics yet, but there will be 2 other products coming very soon. There is a longer adventure that's coming, kind of like a campaign length adventure that will have all the maps and everything loaded up for you in Roll20. And there's also an expansion for monsters and ships coming as well.
So in terms of someone learning to play a new game, I understand how you do that when you're learning to play it from a book or a PDF. How do you do it when you're learning to play it? What are you presented with? Because presumably there's quite a bit to read. How does Roll20 present that to you? Do you get a PDF, or how does it work?
So right now, the way the information is delivered is in 2 different ways. One is through the Roll20 compendium, which is basically like a wiki that you can sit down and read on a tablet, a phone, your computer, and you can go through page by page. Like there are buttons at the bottom that say like, take me to the next page. So you can read it that way. Everything is hyperlinked in there. So if you're reading about something and you think, I want to know more about this, you can click that. The other cool thing about that as a game designer is that like it's super easy to update. So, hey, we found a typo. We can just fix that and that kind of thing.
You don't have to reprint anything.
Exactly. The other way is through handouts. So if you're actually in a game, like in a virtual tabletop setting in Roll20, there are handouts that can be handed that are also like hyperlinked and cross-linked and things like that, that you can go through one at a time, and they're organized into journals, and you can read the game. And if you buy the game, you as the GM can share compendium access with anybody who you're in a game with. So it works that way. And you don't need Roll20 Pro or Plus tools to play any part of Bryte, right? Like you can, if you want to use dynamic lighting and stuff, all the maps are ready to go with that. But if you don't have a Pro or Plus subscription, it's fine. You can still play without dynamic lighting. So we didn't want to, we didn't want the barrier to entry to be like, and you also have to get a Roll20 account, and you have to do that. If you buy one Bryte, you get Bryte, and you can play it, and you can share it with your friends.
Because it's currently free to play on Roll20, so really it's just like the person running the game would have to have the subscription, or
yes, or the person who sets up the game. So let's say if you buy the game but you want Russ to run it, you can set up the game and set the game to share your compendium with Russ, and then you just make Russ the GM once he joins, and you're good to go.
Okay.
Yeah.
That sounds an equitable way to do it.
So you've been working on this for 3 years, you say. How does it feel to finally release an entirely new RPG system, which you started from scratch?
Yeah, it is. It feels great, and it feels surreal, and the reception to it has been good, right? Like, I was so nervous that somebody was going to open it up and be like, well, actually, this is quite crap, and you're terrible, and and I was going to be like, you're right, it's horrible, and I should never write another word about a role-playing game again.
I think we all feel that. I wouldn't worry too much there.
Exactly. And so it's been well received, and it's sort of, it hits me in weird moments. So there's an actual play that Roll20 started that Celeste Konowich is the game master for, and she's put together this amazing cast. And I was watching it last night. It comes on Thursday nights at 7 o'clock Pacific time. And I was like, wow, people are playing this game and I'm not running
That's
it. Like,
weird,
this is really weird.
When that first happened to me,
sounds like big time,
that was such a strange feeling. It really was.
Yeah.
Well, congratulations on the launch. The game looks fantastic.
Thank you.
Can I ask, are there plans to release it in any other format, or is it strictly a Roll20 thing?
So I cannot comment at this time.
Okay. So that's a yes then.
You said it,
yeah.
Oh, dear me.
So, James, thank you so much for coming on again.
Thank you.
As always, it's an absolute pleasure. Oh, I would note, I was on James's podcast last week as well. Oh, so if you want to head on over to James's podcast, I was on there talking all about mythological figures and maleficent monsters.
Yes, we had a great conversation. We also talked about the awfully cheerful engine.
We did.
Which I love.
We've got the playtest reports starting to trickle in now, and
fantastic.
They're all really positive as well, which is I'm really happy
good.
about.
Yeah, they should be. It's really lovely and simple to play with. Yeah.
Anyway, thank you so much for coming on. Next week, we will be having Kevin Culp and his co-writer to talk all about their new Kickstarter and their new game. We've had Kevin on before.
Fantastic.
And that will be fun.
Yes.
But until then, thank you everybody for listening. It's going to be a goodbye until next week from me, Russ.
It's goodbye from me, Peter Coffey from the Southampton Guild of Roleplayers.
And Peter, I will be back to destroy you. Goodbye from me, James Introcaso.
Apparently I now have to read this to you. This is the official podcast of Morris's unofficial tabletop RPG news, which you can find at enworld.org. You can find show notes at morris.podbean.com or wherever you found the podcast. If you feel like they deserve it, you can support the show on Patreon. In return, you will receive exclusive bonus content. Just go to patreon.com/Morris. If you're interested in his babbling nonsense, you can follow @Morris on the Twitter. Send your emails to morrispodcast@gmail.com. Not all of your emails, just the ones you want us to see. That's it. I'm bored now. You can go away. Shoo, off you go. Goodbye. Get out of here.
Yeah, I am going to spend it all on a large, life-size chocolate T-Rex.
Nice. I mean, to be fair, I think you might be overpaying at that sort of rate. Yeah.
Well, if I make it an animatronic chocolate T-Rex.
Now we're talking.
But the actual animatronics are made, the actual mechanisms are all made of chocolate too.